Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the RAF strikes at the Italians' war industry, showing the damage that they did, and you can see here they're just dumping rubble basically into the water. We're now on to intensification of the anti-submarine war. October 1942. Anti-U-boat warfare increased. After the British First Lord of the Admiralty had announced in Parliament in September that 530 U-boats had been sunk or damaged since the outbreak of the war, new and more deadly methods were taken against the enemy at sea. And then in the following months, when the success in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and elsewhere were much more encouraging. On November 1st, the new Anti-U-Boat Warfare Committee held its first weekly meeting in London to discuss new means of grappling with the peril at sea. This organization, marking a new phase in the Allied sea warfare, was formed out of the Battle of the Atlantic Committee, which had been set up by Winston Churchill in February 1941. The pictures show above the crew of a damaged German U-boat returning. Oh, whoops! I got a little bit ahead of myself. Above the crew of a damaged Italian submarine surrendering to a British destroyer in the Mediterranean. Yeah, we talk about the German U-boats a lot, but we don't talk about the Italian submarines very much. But they did have them, and they used them quite effectively. They're not talked about as much. Most of Italian warfare isn't really talked about as much in this war because we just think of the Italians as, oh well, they lost really easily, but that's not fully true. They did have a decent navy at the start, and yeah, they didn't use it as effectively, but and then to the left, right here, a German U-boat returning to its concrete pen inside the well-protected harbor at Lorient. And here you can see these concrete parts. And yeah, obviously this is a good place to store them. Can't see them from above, really. They just look like concrete slabs, more or less. And it keeps them well enough protected. And then right here is the crew of another Italian submarine in the water awaiting their rescue by Allied ships. Yeah, a lot of the times these men would just kind of be stuck in the water until an Allied ship came up and said, hey, get in. Sometimes if they were lucky, for them, if they were lucky, a fellow Italian or German ship was right there. And it wasn't like the Allies just completely destroyed them, but it was not often the case. It was usually an Allied ship that came and then interned them as prisoners of war. Montgomery and his 8th Army opened battle for North Africa. October 23rd, 1942. British offensive in Egypt begins. The long-expected attack by the 8th Army began in bright moonlight on the night of October 23rd at El Alamein, following the heaviest gun barrage ever put up in the Western Desert. For this preliminary softening of Rommel's deep defensive lines, the Allied artillery were ranged on a front of 6 miles with 1 gun to every 23 yards. For several hours, a hell of fury was let loose on the enemy's positions before the 8th Army, with powerful air, artillery, and tank support went forward to the attack. General Sir Bernard L. Montgomery used entirely new tactics in the battle by making a frontal attack against an unbroken line of trenches and minefields. The first stage of the attack was carried out by British and Dominion infantry, who, by dawn on October 24th, had penetrated 4 miles through the gap in the enemy's advanced minefields. The enemy's main position were successfully attacked at several points, and many German and Italian prisoners were taken. Heavy fighting continued throughout the day and night while our troops consolidated their positions, and by the evening of October 25th, the number of prisoners had amounted to 1,450. Meanwhile, the Allied air forces, working in perfect cooperation with the 8th Army, kept up their non-stop blitz on the enemy troop concentrations, landing grounds, transports, and supply lines. On the first day of the attack, well over 1,000 sorties Over 1,000 sorties were made by Allied bombers and fighters, dealing devastating blows on Rommel's communications and paving the way for the advance. On the night of November 1st, General Montgomery launched a great offensive with strong tank support on a 4,000-yard front 15 miles west of El Alamein. British infantry fighting their way through the minefields, barbed wire, and booby traps had at last cleared a way for the armored forces. All day long on November 2nd, the great tank battle raged at El Alamein. I'm gonna get a little ahead of myself. It's El Aquear. Aquear? I'm not sure how that is pronounced, actually. This was the turning point which led to the clearing of the enemy from Egypt and their pursuit into Libya. The pictures show a long line of British tanks moving up to the front. And yeah, you can see, obviously, there's this one, and then you keep looking back, and you can see it goes all the way back and around. Quite a few. And then here's some truck support, really, too. Supply trucks, things like that. Following up with them. Fresh water for the desert fighters. November 1942. Navy brings supplies ashore. Right from the first day of General Montgomery's advance at El Alamein, the British Navy maintained the closest operation with the British forces on land. Between October 24th and November 3rd, naval units operating from Alexandria carried out operations in the enemy's rear, shelling defenses along the coast. Although the ships were attacked from the air, they suffered no losses. With the reoccupation of Saloum and Bardia on November 12th, the 8th Army had now won back several useful ports on the Mediterranean to which the Royal Navy could bring regular supplies. Fresh water was one of these major problems of warfare in this arid desert country, particularly on account of the speed of the British advance. But the Navy, true to its tradition, helped to provide a solution. Soon after British troops had entered Saloum, 33,000 barrels of water, each containing about 44 gallons, were brought ashore at Saloum by improvised landing craft. The picture shows some of the barrels being rolled on to the beach. You can see all that. Yeah, obviously, like they said, lots of water in a desert country is kind of important. If you don't have water, your army is going to die just from dehydration. It takes about 3 days for a human to go into, what is it? I think it's like 3 days without water, and the human basically dies. So getting as much water to these troops as possible. And, 33,000 barrels, 44 gallons? That's, 33 times 44? I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's a lot of water. I'm going to figure it out now. Just give me, 1 second. It's about 144,000 barrels or something like that. I'm a little wrong. It's actually 134 barrels, I think. 134,000 barrels or gallons of water. So it's a lot of water, which, you need for a big army. The 8th Army clears Hellfire Pass. November 3rd to 11th, 1942. Rommel chased from Egypt. On November 3rd, the 8th Army began the pursuit of Rommel's battered divisions toward Libya. Next day, the Afrika Korps was in full flight, leaving 13,000 prisoners and vast quantities of material. By November 6th, Axis prisoners totaled 20,000, and British had captured some 400 tanks, 350 guns, and thousands of vehicles. After slight resistance, Mersa Matar was regained on November 8th and Sidi Barrani on November 10th. The coast road towards Saloum and Halafaya Pass became choked by the retreating army, whose columns were thrown into hopeless confusion by the incessant strafing of Allied bombers. By November 10th, the 8th Army had established on both sides of Halafaya a contingent of Dominion troops having moved up from the south. Large numbers of Axis troops were trapped between Halafaya and Saloum. On November 11th, the Halafaya Pass was captured and over 1,100 prisoners, mainly Italians, fell into British hands. As Axis forces retreated, Italian engineers were detailed to blow up the coast road at Halafaya. It took great numbers of them 4 days and nights to finish the demolitions. Nevertheless, the 8th Army engineers, above, these guys right here, replaced it within 24 hours. Yeah, they're just kind of flexing, basically, showing, hey, look, it took them 4 days to destroy this road. We fixed it in 24 hours. Take that. Kind of a flex saying, like, hey, look, we can repair what you can destroy way faster. And that's kind of like the whole war, really. An example is in like the Pacific, where the Japanese would destroy an American ship, and then there would be another one that basically replaces it like in a few months, if that even. This whole war is basically like giant replacement of anything the enemy could destroy. And so you just kind of overwhelm them. You know, they think, oh, hey, look, we destroyed all this. Good for us. We did it. And then it's like, oh, well, actually, we repaired all of it. It's not actually gone. And then it's just kind of like, oh, okay. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I could improve on. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.